So I really have just one question for you. How many of Epstein's co-conspirators have you indicted? How many perpetrators are you even investigating?
First, you showed it. I find it.
How many have you indicted?
Excuse me. I'm going to answer the question.
Answer my question.
No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question.
No,
Your
you're going to answer the
theatrics are
question the
ridiculous.
way I asked it.
Chairman Jordan, I'm not going to get in the gutter with these people, but I'm going to answer the question.
How many have you indicted?
Again, the time belongs to
Claiming my time.
The time belongs.
I think it's very interesting.
Claiming my time.
I think it's very interesting.
And you can
when
reclaim
he
your
talks
time.
about they indicted, the president said they indicted him twice.
Mr. Chairman, please stop the clock and restore his time.
Okay, here we go with these theatrics.
The time belongs. Respond.
I find it interesting that she keeps going after President Trump, the greatest president in American history. And if they could maintain their composure, this isn't a circus, this is a hearing. I find it interesting she keeps going after Donald Trump. She doesn't say how much money she took from Reid Hoffman, did you? None. And nor did
Mr.
she
Chairman,
post
regular
anything.
order, please.
She
regular
posted nothing on her X account, on her Twitter account during the Biden years.
Gentle lady.
Yet
Chairman,
now,
there
all
was
of
no
a sudden,
question
she's going after.
Committee will be in order.
There was no question
on
asked,
you.
Attorney General. She doesn't just get to
Committee will be in order.
I have a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Committee will be in order.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Lady can state her point of order.
When a witness attacks...
Not a valid point of order. You got to state.
She hasn't completed her point of order yet. Please let her speak, Mr. Chairman. Let's have some regular order here.
Regular order is you got to state the rule. And
I am trying to make a point of order that the witness,
and what rule are you referring to?
Without responding to a question, has attacked me personally. I think it's pathetic that she can't answer the questions and instead is attacking
that is not even close to a point of order.
The Democratic ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, Jamie Raskin, eviscerated Donald Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi during his opening statement. Pam Bondi testified before the House Judiciary Committee as part of its oversight functions. Raskin's opening statement was devastating. Pam Bondi appeared passive-aggressive, refusing to even look at Raskin as he dismantled her point by point. As Pam Bondi arrived at the hearing, cameras captured this greeting.
Bondi, you are a disgrace to the American people. You protect pedophiles and systematic...
Here's how Raskin opened his statement.
Welcome, Attorney General Bondi. You've got the best lawyer's job in America because your mission is justice and your clients are the American people. But to promote justice for the people, you've got to listen to the victims, like the women seated behind you today. Those are just some of the hundreds of survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's global trafficking ring who are demanding that the truth be told and are demanding accountability for the abusers who trafficked and... You still haven't met with these survivors. So with their permission, let me introduce to you the survivors and late survivors' family members who are present today. There's Teresa Helm, there's Jess Michaels, Laura Bloom McGee, Danny Bensky, Liz Stein, Marina Lacerda, Sky and Amanda Roberts, who are the family of the late Virginia Giuffre, Charlene Richard, and Lisa Phillips. Now, you're not showing a lot of interest in the victims, Madam Attorney General, whether it's Epstein's human trafficking ring or the governmental violence against citizens in Minneapolis. As Attorney General, you're siding with the perpetrators and you're ignoring the victims. That will be your legacy unless you act quickly to change course.
Raskin then detailed how Pam Bondi is orchestrating a massive Epstein cover-up.
That will be your legacy unless you act quickly to change course. You're running a massive Epstein cover-up right out of the Department of Justice. You've been ordered by subpoena and by Congress to turn over 6 million documents, photographs, and videos in the Epstein files, but you've turned over only 3 million. You say you're not turning over the other 3 million because they're somehow duplicative, but we know that there are actual memos of victim statements in there, and you also took down the Department of Justice's prosecution memo from 2019. So it's clearly not all duplicative, but even if it were, why not release it? Just release all the duplicative stuff. In the half you did produce, you redacted the names of enablers, accomplices, and co-conspirators, apparently to spare them embarrassment and disgrace, which is the exact opposite of what the law ordered you to do. Even worse, you shockingly failed to redact many of the victims' names, which is what you were ordered to do by Congress. Some of the victims had come forward publicly, but many had not. Many had kept their torment private, even from family and friends. But you published their names, their identities, their images on thousands of pages for the world to see. So you ignored the law, and even with over 100,000 employees at your disposal, you acted with some mixture of staggering incompetence, cold indifference, and jaded cruelty towards more than 1,000 victims abused and trafficked. This performance screams cover-up.
Raskin continued explaining how Pam Bondi and Trump have systematically abandoned victims while protecting perpetrators, not just in the Epstein files, but in their handling of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Prey, calling them domestic terrorists.
But abandoning victims and coddling perpetrators is what you do best. When the FBI opened a criminal investigation into the brutal killing in Minneapolis of Renee Good, a poet and 37-year-old mother of three, by Trump's masked paramilitary ICE agents, you shut it down. You claim you're investigating the cold-blooded murder of Alex Preddy, an ICU nurse at the VA. But how can we trust the administration when the president and Kristi Noem call Preddy a domestic terrorist and Stephen Miller called him a would-be assassin? Not only do you refuse to share evidence with the state and local investigators and prosecutors in Minnesota, you have blocked their access to the crime scene and the evidence. How are you seeking justice for Marimar Martinez, the Montessori school teacher in Chicago who was shot 5 times by a Border Patrol agent who bragged about it on text? Or the family of Keith Porter, a father of 2 shot and killed by an off-duty ICE agent in LA? Or the family of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, shot and killed in Illinois minutes after he dropped his kids off at school? There's no sign of any movement at the Department of Justice. You even launched a criminal investigation into Renee Good's grieving widow. How sick is that?
But the corruption runs deeper. Raskin explained that Trump orders prosecutions like ordering pizza, sending messages on Truth Social that Pam Bondi immediately executes. The complete corruption of the justice system is unprecedented in American history.
But it's even worse. You've turned the People's Department of Justice into Trump's instrument of revenge. Trump orders up prosecutions like pizza, and you deliver every time. He tells you to go after James Comey, Letitia James, Lisa Cook, and Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve Board, and members of Congress like Adam Schiff, Mark Kelly, Alyssa Slotkin, Chrissy Houlihan, Jason Crow, Chris Deluzio, and Maggie Goodlander, to name a few, and you snap to it. You replace real prosecutors with counterfeit stooges who robotically do the president's bidding. Nothing in American history comes close to this complete corruption of the justice function and contamination of federal law enforcement. And the good news is many serious lawyers at DOJ, including some of your own original appointees, have refused your lawless orders. Danielle Sassoon, your original pick for acting U.S. Attorney in Manhattan, resigned rather than follow your corrupt order to quash an indictment against Mayor Eric Adams as a political favor from Donald Trump. A Federalist Society member who clerked for Justice Scalia, U.S. Attorney Sassoon refused to participate in this blatantly corrupt scheme. Her top assistant, Hagan Scotton, an Iraqi war vet and 2-time Bronze Star recipient who clerked for Chief Justice Roberts, and then Judge Kavanaugh, promptly resigned too, writing to your office, quote, "I expect you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion, but it was never going to be me." You and the president nominated Eric Siebert, a 15-year career prosecutor, to be your U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. But after 5 months of investigating Letitia James and James Comey, he found no evidence to justify criminal charges. So you forced him out. You replaced him with Lindsay Halligan, Trump's personal lawyer from the Mar-a-Lago documents case, who had 0 prosecutorial experience and no qualifications. And then you were humiliated when a federal judge found that this corrupt appointment was blatantly unlawful and threw out Halligan's indictments entirely. And grand juries of American citizens have repeatedly rejected your vendettas and baseless indictments brought by the hacks left at DOJ now, with 2 different grand juries in Virginia voting down indictments against Letitia James in a single week. And just yesterday, another grand jury shut down your vendetta factory by rejecting indictments against the 6 members of Congress who had spoken out to remind all service members that they have a duty to refuse illegal orders.
Raskin revealed that Trump's DOJ attempted to indict 6 members of Congress, 2 senators and 4 House members, for making a video reminding military personnel they're not required to follow unlawful orders. The DOJ tried prosecuting them for seditious conspiracy. Fortunately, a Washington, D.C. grand jury rejected the indictment.
You tried to get a grand jury to indict 6 members of Congress who are veterans of our armed forces on charges of seditious conspiracy simply for exercising their First Amendment rights. I hope you will heed the wisdom and the constitutional patriotism of those grand jurors and not try it again by doubling down on that humiliation.
Raskin then delivered a direct warning to Pam Bondi. Answer the questions. Stop evading. Stop changing subjects. Stop personal attacks. Don't waste precious time.
Now, as ranking member, I asked the chairman to add a few extra rounds of questions today because we each have 5 hours of questions, not 5 minutes, but we're stuck with 5 minutes. That's clearly insufficient to give voice to America's victims and survivors and to demand answers about all the corruption and cover-ups that we see at DOJ right now. We've got just 1 round, so we ask you politely but firmly, Madam Attorney General, please do not waste 1 second of our precious time by evading questions, by changing the subject, or engaging in personal attacks against members of Congress. We saw your performance in the Senate, and we're not going to accept that. This isn't a game. In the Senate, you brought something with you called a burn book, a binder of smears to attack members personally for doing the people's work of oversight. Please set the burn book aside and answer our questions. And when you hear us reclaim our time, that means it's time for you to stop speaking. We only have 5 minutes, so when we reclaim our time, that means you stop. And if you don't, we will ask the chair to stop the clock and let you go on his time. The quality of justice in America depends on the character of our government. Please do your job and bring the Department of Justice back from the brink. The survivors seated behind you and the American people watching everywhere deserve a Department of Justice worthy of its name.
A particularly powerful moment occurred when Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett asked survivors in attendance to stand. She asked them to raise their hands if they'd never met Pam Bondi or had any opportunity to meet with the DOJ. The DOJ's primary priority should be protecting survivors and victims. That's their fundamental mission. Prosecute perpetrators and help victims.
To the survivors in the room, if you are willing, please stand. And if you are willing, please raise your hands if you have still not been able to meet with this Department of Justice. Please know for the record that every single survivor has raised.
Every single survivor raised their hand. None have met with Pam Bondi or the DOJ. Pam Bondi's opening statement consisted of whining about judicial activism and coordinated judicial opposition from judges who supposedly don't like Trump.
This administration has been sued 627 times. We fought through a nonstop flood of bad faith temporary restraining orders from liberal activist judges across this country. America has never seen this level of coordinated judicial opposition towards a presidential administration. It is not only an unlawful attack on the executive branch's authority, but a serious attack on the democratic process. In spite of this unprecedented judicial activism, we've attained 24 favorable rulings at the U.S. Supreme Court, their emergency docket, and even more to come. We've done so while ending the weaponization of the prior administration by dropping FACE Act prosecutions, exposing the Arctic Frost scandal via congressional disclosure, thank you, Chairman, and restoring one tier of justice in this country.
Then Pam Bondi had the audacity to claim she wants to acknowledge the Epstein survivors, after the survivors just demonstrated she refused to meet with any of them. The phoniness, the fraud, the dishonesty couldn't be more obvious.
All members of Congress, as you know, are invited to visit DOJ to see for yourselves. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the Epstein survivors who are here today. I'm a career prosecutor, and despite what the ranking member said, I have spent my entire career fighting for victims, and I will continue to do so. I am deeply sorry for what any victim has been through, especially as a result of that monster. If you have any information to share with law enforcement about anyone who has hurt you, the FBI is waiting to hear from you. I want you to know that any accusations of criminal wrongdoing will be taken seriously and investigated. The Department of Justice is committed to holding criminals accountable to the fullest extent of the law.
Before the hearing, survivors spoke publicly about their disappointment with Pam Bondi and DOJ leadership.
Ms. Bondi, we are deeply disappointed by the way you and your leadership in this department have treated survivors. And today, while you're being questioned, we ask you to look in the eyes of every single one of us and remember Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who paid the ultimate sacrifice for the trauma that she had endured. We ask you to remember the lives that we have lost during this process. Accountability means real answers, not evasion. It means transparency, not more hiding.
Another survivor explained that the Trump regime keeps saying they want to move on from Epstein, but survivors cannot move on.
We as a nation have an opportunity to send a strong message that we will not protect people who victimize children, that we will stand up for what is right, despite what our politics are, that we will cross the aisle, and that we will stand behind survivors for justice. We keep hearing our press secretary and our Department of Justice and other government officials saying they're moving on from this. I wish that we could. I met Epstein and Maxwell when I was 21 years old. I'm nearly 53 now. We cannot move on as survivors of this crime and as citizens of this nation without changing this narrative. So I ask you all to stand behind us and demand accountability for our government, because we certainly are going to.
A third survivor described how the DOJ botched redactions so severely, exposing victims' images while protecting predators' identities, that it cannot be interpreted as accidental. It appears malicious, designed to intimidate and harm survivors.
Last year, I stood here as a survivor demanding the release of the Epstein files. Today, I stand here again as a citizen demanding accountability now that Congress is questioning Pam Bondi of the Department of Justice about the handling of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Let me be clear. Survivors are furious. We watched the Justice Department botch redactions so badly that victims' images were exposed while predators' identities were kept hidden and protected. That does not feel like an accident or a clerical error.
Jamie Raskin dismantled Pam Bondi's credibility piece by piece. The survivors demonstrated the DOJ's complete abandonment of victims. The evidence of cover-up and corruption is overwhelming. Pam Bondi's legacy will be defined by her protection of predators and abandonment of victims unless she changes course immediately. But based on today's testimony, that change appears unlikely.
Who is Chris Malin?
Was the president aware? Please stop talking. It is not your time to ask questions. It is not your time. I'm reclaiming my time, Mr. Chair.
Time belongs to the gentlelady from Vermont.
Was the president aware of Secretary Lutnick's ties to Epstein when he chose him to lead the Department of Commerce? Was he aware?
Chris Malin was a Border Patrol agent.
Okay, so I'm going to conclude that the president, in fact, did know about his ties because he was the next door neighbor.
Shame on you.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
You're
this
from
is
a tiny,
pathetic. This is
beautiful state.
pathetic, Mr.
Committee
Chair.
will be in order.
I am not asking trick questions here.
On September 25th, President Trump signed a memorandum known as NSPM 7, purporting to address domestic terrorism. But Americans across the political spectrum were immediately alarmed by the memo's blurring of the line between unlawful conduct and constitutionally protected speech and activity, as well as its call to investigate, prosecute, and dismantle groups that the president and Stephen Miller described without evidence as, quote, an organized campaign of radical left terrorism. Now, counterterrorism experts were further alarmed by the administration's singular focus on left-wing extremism, combined with the sudden deletion from the DOJ website of decades of research and law enforcement analysis, which had concluded that right-wing extremism poses the greatest terrorism threat to Americans. The president's memo broadly and vaguely links violent conduct to ideologies, and it targeted specifically anti-American, anti-Christian, and anti-capitalist beliefs, as well as, quote, hostility to so-called traditional American views on family, religion, and morality, end quote. President Trump has repeatedly and openly, however falsely, tried to brand his political opponents with these sentiments listed in his memo. But as you know, as a lawyer, holding beliefs that the White House disagrees with is not a crime. And the statute defining domestic terrorism requires criminal acts, not just thoughts and ideas. That's why legal experts, nonprofit leaders, religious freedom, and civil rights advocates immediately raised the alarm that the new presidential directive was a politically motivated attack on civil society designed to silence those who disagree with the administration. So, Ms. Bondi, Section 3 of that memo directed you, as Attorney General, to submit to the President and Stephen Miller a list of groups or entities whose members are engaged in acts that meet the definition of domestic terrorism. And then on December 4th, you directed the FBI to work with a variety of law enforcement entities to compile a list of groups and entities engaged in such acts by January 3rd, 2026, and to update that report every 30 days thereafter. So can we assume that you or persons under your direction at the Department of Justice have prepared that list of groups or entities who are designated as domestic terrorist organizations? And I just remind you that's a yes or no question. Did you prepare the list?
Well, I'm not going to answer it yes or no, but what I will say is I know Antifa is part of that. I will talk to you about that.
I'm reclaiming my time. I asked
2025,
whether you
an Antifa member was arrested in Minneapolis federal court for
my time.
stalking.
Did you
they
have
ask a question
list?
and don't want an answer.
The answer is yes or no.
Time belongs to the gentlelady from Pennsylvania. Gentlelady can proceed.
Okay.